In this video, we are going to look at pedigrees and how we can use them to show inheritance in a family. So a pedigree is simply a graphic representation of inheritance in a family. And you can think of it like a family tree for your traits. So here's an example of a pedigree of a particular family. And we'll look at exactly how to draw this and how to interpret this here in a second. So when we draw them, we're going to use a square as a male and a circle as a female. Now, to identify whether or not this person has a particular trait that we're looking at, if you don't fill in the circle or the square, that person we're going to say doesn't have that trait. So if I'm looking at, say, brown hair, if it's not filled in, that person does not have brown hair. If it is filled in, that means that person does have the trait. So these people would have brown hair. And if it's half and half, that means that they are a carrier. And remember, a carrier means you're heterozygous. So you don't have the trait, but you have the allele, and you could pass that on. So again, let's look at this pedigree. So what we can see here is that we have a collection of males and females. If there is a horizontal line, then that means that those people have had children. Vertical lines, you follow those down, and that gets you to their children. So let's pretend that you are either this circle or this square. That means that this individual is your mother. So you notice if you follow the vertical lines, it comes up to this couple above you, and that would be your parents. And then if you follow that up, this person would be your grandfather. That is the dad of your dad. This would be your dad's brother, which would be your uncle. This would be an aunt. And this would be a cousin, because that is the children of your dad's sister. So these would be your first cousins. Now, also on here, we can see we have 3 generations. So we have your grandparents' generation, your parents' generation, and your generation. So as you can see, it's broken down in that way as well. So how do I interpret them? In other words, how do I look at what type of trait that we have here? So let's say we're looking at a dominant trait like brown hair. If that person is filled in, meaning that they have brown hair, since this is a dominant trait, they are either homozygous dominant or heterozygous. They have to have at least one of those dominant alleles. If they're not filled in, what that tells me is they do not have a dominant allele, so they would have blonde hair. They have to be homozygous recessive. And you can't be a carrier here because if you have one dominant allele, you automatically have that trait. Now, for recessive traits, in this case, let's say we're looking at blonde hair. So someone who is homozygous recessive would be filled in because they would have blonde hair. Someone who's homozygous dominant, meaning that they have brown hair and no blonde allele, would be not filled in at all. And someone who's heterozygous would be a carrier. So this means that they have brown hair, but they have the blonde allele and could pass that on.